Hello, dear readers. Welcome to our 1 year anniversary show. Our fearless leader, Katie, has reminded us that it is a year tomorrow exactly since our first book talks. Awesome. Can you believe it's been a year? And what a year it has been for sure. If I had planned accordingly, this could have been a big thing, but you know what? With school and with going back to work and just the craziness of what is life right now, I'm glad Katie's keeping us on track about dates and whatnot. So tonight we're going to talk to you about some books. I know in the past few weeks I've been, I admit, a little bit of a slacker because I have taken like a little bit of a break from YA, and I had been reading some adult thrillers and mysteries. Well, I jumped back into YA, and boy, did I jump back into YA. And so I'm going to talk about two of the books that I've read in the past couple weeks. I've read a lot more, but for the interest of time, I'm going to keep it short tonight. And I'm going to talk about these two because they were like 4s and 5s on my Goodreads. They're really good. So the first book I'm going to talk about is actually a book that we're reading all together for our book group, and it is These Vengeful Hearts, and it is by Catherine Lauren. Okay, I'm going to tell you, this book is amazeballs. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It is one of those where it is like Mean Girls to the extreme. And also, some of you might know that I am an Alice in Wonderland fan, and it has like these little, connections to Alice in Wonderland. Not huge. It's not like an Alice in Wonderland retelling, but there's these little lines that it's like, oh, and they go down to the White Rabbit, and I'm like, that's Alice in Wonderland. And so it's really cool, but it is a tale of a group at Heller High, which they nickname Hell High, a group of young women who basically rule the school, and you can ask them for favors and they will do things, but then you're in their debt forever. And our fearless leader in the book, Ember, whose name is September because she was born in September. Cool, right? Ember, she joins the club, so then that way she wants to take it down from the inside because of something that happened to her sister. So she joins the Red Court, and shenanigans ensue, and it gets a little crazy. I loved it. I love books like these. It reminds me of a book like Foul is Fair. I know we've talked about that, but it has this, it's like, ooh, is high school really like that? And yeah, sometimes it is. It's ruthless and cutthroat. And so if you read Foul is Fair, I really do think you'll like this one. And just on a spoiler note, it looks like it might have a sequel. So keep that in mind. All right. So now we are moving on to Deborah.
All right. Thanks. That's what I like, is a good sequel, just when you thought you could close a book up. Okay, so I'm going back to an author that I've read before lots of times. His name is Gary Schmidt, and this book is just like that. This is the new book. So previously for this group, I think last spring, I did a book of Gary Schmidt's called Pay Attention, Carter Jones. This one is along the same lines as Lizzie Bright and the Buckminster Boy, Okay for Now, and the Wednesday Wars. In fact, some of those same characters show up in this book in sort of a side way. And of course, like all of those books, the Vietnam War is a huge character in all of the books that I just mentioned, and it is in this one too. So this time our protagonist is a young lady named Meryl Lee. She's an 8th grader, and a close friend of hers has just died. And she's grieving over that, and she's having a hard time. So her parents decide to send her to an all-girls prep school up in Maine so that she can get a fresh start. Now, unfortunately, this prep school is terribly snooty and has a lot of socioeconomic and class rules that Meryl Lee doesn't quite agree with. But as the headmistress says, she is there to learn what her accomplishment in life will be. So we're going to spend the rest of the book figuring out what Meryl Lee's accomplishment is. In a parallel story in the same little community, a teenage boy shows up in this small town, which is by the ocean, and he's been running away from some very bad events that have happened in his life. He's all kinds of history, gangs, theft, violence, and he's left kind of a little trail of bodies, not real bodies, but a little trail of bad events behind him. So needless to say, these two stories converge. The point of their convergence is the headmistress of the school. She kind of adopts the boy, takes him into her home, and then she sort of mentors Meryl Lee along her path at the school also. So no spoilers here, but it does kind of all come out in the end okay. There's a little bit of romance between Meryl Lee and the boy, but this is really a book that's geared to the middle school, 7th, 8th, maybe 9th grade level. So very little, there's some romance, but it's more of the kiss here and there, not too much graphic violence, but I loved it. It's very touching. He writes this story about this kid who is battling loneliness and finding friends, and how do I make friends? And these people are all so different than me. And how do we include others in our friend group? I liked it. I would give it a 4.5 maybe out of 5, but then I'm a big Gary Schmidt fan. So I recommend it, Gary Schmidt, Just Like That. And I'm going to pass it over to my friend Steve.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be back and celebrating our 1-year anniversary. I'm going to talk about John Green's Turtles All the Way Down. 286-page realistic young adult fiction novel with some romance thrown in because, you know, it's John Green. And I've read all the John Green books. I really like him. He's probably going to be best known for The Fault in Our Stars because it got made into a very popular movie. But I think we should not neglect this book because I think this is one of his best books. It's the story of Asa Holmes, and she's she's got OCD, and that's actually personal territory for John Green because he's dealt with OCD in his life. So I felt like he went a little deeper with the character in this book with his own experience and just authentic character there. Well, she is a writer of Star Wars fan fiction, and there's a mystery of a fugitive billionaire, and while she happens to fall in love with his son, and she fights with the daily struggle of her OCD. This kind of book has all the elements of John Green books kind of all wrapped up into one book, but it adds that the main character has OCD, and that was personal territory for the writer. And I think he handles it with delicacy, and it feels authentic. One quote that stood out to me in the book was, "When my thoughts spiraled, I was in the spiral and of it. I wanted to tell him that the idea of being in a feeling gave language to something I couldn't describe before, created a form for it, but I couldn't figure out how to say any of that out loud." So kind of touching with the inner conflict that someone with OCD has, like just on a daily basis, that I think people don't see on the surface. I recommend this for anybody who's a fan of John Green, realistic fiction, and that's it. I'm going to pass it on to Katie.
Oh, hello. My name is Katie. Apparently the fearless leader of this group. I really thought of us more as a collective, but you know, shit's got to get done. Shit's got to get done. Sincerely, your neighborhood, friendly neighborhood Virgo. So my book this week is a book called Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. So if you've been here in the last year, happy anniversary to us. You've probably heard me say 17 billion times that I love a badass female and a badass female lead. And then Lou gives that to us in spades. So the story is about a witch. Lou has run away from her coven. Shit went, turned 16. And she ran away, started this sort of vagabond life in the city. I always get the like Paris vibe from this. It's very sort of French. and she runs afoul of sort of clergymen, I guess you would call them. They're the Chaucers, Reed Diggory, and he is a part of an organization that is hell-bent, pun intended, about stamping out witchcraft and witches in this world. And so they run afoul of each other in order to save Lou from the fire and to save Reed Diggory's reputation. His sort of Monsignor marries them. So now Reed has taken responsibility for Lou to sort of save both their reputations from the situation they get involved in. So as you might imagine, this is a very strong tale of opposites attract, sort of enemies to lovers situation. Normally that's not my jam, but I kind of like the way that she took the whole book to develop that. And it didn't just like from one to the other, right? We hate each other, now we're in love, and now we're married and we hate each other. And then when the truth comes out, obviously feelings are hurt, trust has been broken. This is going to be a sequel. It is a trilogy now. I think the sequel is out called Blood and Honey. The third part in the trilogy, Gods and Monsters, is coming, if not already published. So, you know, I'm a sucker for a trilogy. I'm a completist. I will be reading the next one. And when I get it done, I'll give you a report on it. That's it. Serpent and Dove. Next up, Misty Horning.
Heidi ho, welcome back. All right, so as you know, I'm a librarian at Valley, and once school started, back a couple weeks ago, I was walking through my library and I was like, I need a really good dystopia book. I love dystopia. Dystopia and then fantasy, those are my two favorites. But dystopia's kind of fallen to the wayside a little bit. I don't know. It used to be real popular, and now it's kind of not as many. However, I saw one on the shelf that I was like, hey, I have that book at home, because it was like a Barnes and Noble special for like $5. So I bought the book because that's what I do. And the book is The Similars by Rebecca Hanover. And this is one of those books. The paperback looks really different than the hardback. So the hardback is white and has like these stairs on it. It's a little bit different. The paperback matches the sequel's hardback because, yeah, there's a sequel, and I'm in the middle of reading that one, so I'm not going to give you any like spoilers on that. But The Similars, it's totally cool. It is about cloning, about these students, these teenagers who are clones, and they're called similars because they are not exactly like the people that they were cloned from. They're similar to them in looks and in DNA. They have the same DNA. However, I mean, different personalities, different everything. So they are called the similars instead of the clones, because clones starts to take on a derogatory meaning. I love the book, and the reason I really love the book is because it takes this idea and it has like this almost Frankenstein vibe in it of what does it mean to be human? And should we create people? Should we create life? Which is one of, the themes of Frankenstein. Is that the case? Should Victor have created life? I really dig it. But it also has another social commentary on it about immigration and about otherness in society, because now clones, similars, they are the others in society. The United States doesn't allow cloning, but other countries do. And so there's talk that, they have to have their papers in order to come to the United States. They have to have a special ID to come to the United States. And so it's interesting to take that idea of the other and think of it as something as what we're not used to, but it has the same ideas and the same principles. It's deeper than I really thought. And so as I'm reading it, the sequel, unfortunately, I'm not so much a fan of it. I feel like it was rushed. I feel like it's rushed. Rebecca Hanover, I think in this one really did a great job, but it's called The Similars. It's in paperback, and you can find it probably in your local library. And so now I am passing it off to Steve.
Is it Friday yet? Because I'm just ready to hang out. Well, cartoons. Speaking of cartoons, I read a graphic novel for my second book, because you guys know how I roll. Guts by Raina Telgemeier. Some of you may have heard of her because she wrote and illustrated Smile and Drama and Ghosts. Great younger readers. Like I'd say 5th to 7th grade is sort of the perfect target. A 5th to 7th grade reader is kind of the perfect target for her, but she is what I think the master memoir young reader cartoonist. With the exception of Drama and Ghosts, like Smile and Guts, and I think there's one more, they're based on her childhood experiences. And this is a year in her life, like around 5th or 6th grade, when she has a year of anxiety and a lot of stomach and digestive issues because of that anxiety that she has. And it just captures it so perfectly. Here is a little bit of the paneling that demonstrates the interconnectivity between words and pictures to make meaning that you can't make with just a picture or just a text. It's saying the thought that I might gasp was worse than if I actually had. And you can see like the frame like breaking up, you know, in her mind and then into the next picture. But then reality, she's just on the floor kind of, you know, lots of great, very sophisticated paneling going on for just, you know, what you would think is a young reader comic, you know, with a couple trains of thought going on. Her thoughts broken down, represented in pictures and in words, and then in the dialogue, all multiple things happening, which makes comics quite an engaging, interactive read. I know I'm talking more about this book, what it does as a comic book, because it's pretty straightforward. It's just the year in her life that she had all this stomach and digestive problems and her having to get over her anxiety. She does the simple cartooning style, which is very simple eyes on the characters, but there's a lot of other writers and comic cartoonists that do this style, but I think she's the best out of all of them. And it feels authentic, probably because these are all memoirs and it's from her real personal experience. So nothing feels kind of like a stereotypical character or kind of a contrived plot. It's just you're reading a memoir, but it's told through a, you know, quite a little sophisticated cartoon that's fun to read. So I give this like a 5 out of 5 for this genre. And I'm going to pass it off to Katie to close it up.
I'm a little bit in my feels, friends. Reading makes me happy. Reading makes us all happy. And I feel like, especially now in the craziness of the end of the school year, whether or not you are a student attending school or if you're at home still, whether or not you're a teacher at home, or if you're, you know, a parent, librarian, middle school, elementary school, high school teacher, whatever, finding stuff that makes you happy is super important now. And I have found myself stuck in my bad habit of starting too many books at the same time. So part of the reason I chose my book tonight was because I read it a while ago. Like I told Misty earlier, I'm in the middle of reading like 4 books and none of them are done. But out of my crazy day at school, I have been finding moments to just keep plugging away at these books because reading makes me happy. So if somebody is knocking you down a little bit for taking too long to read, or you only read 1 book at a time, or you have too many unread books, like, forget about it. You have found reading, and reading makes you happy, and that's all we can ask for, and that's all we do. That's all the goal of Forever Young Adult is on our 1-year anniversary to remind you that reading makes you a better person, and reading is awesome. So, on that note, that's it for this week's episode. We'll see you in May, because believe it or not, May is next week. Happy reading. Bye.
Bye.